Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria is coming up. One of the best fights of the year, in my opinion, the most technical fight. This is a change of the guard opportunity where the long-reigning featherweight champion finally goes up against a young, undefeated contender. That seems to be a common problem for all dominant champions. That young guy who's made his way to a title shot. This happened with John Jones fighting Dominic Reyes. This happened with Anderson Silva when he fought Chris Weidman. This happened with Dominic Cruz versus Cody Garbrandt, Jose Aldo versus Max Holloway. Now it's Alexander Volkanovski's turn. And Ilia Topuria is a very dangerous fighter with a load of confidence going into this. Well-rounded, has great boxing, good wrestling, amazing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills, but really likes to tackle fights in a heavily boxing-oriented approach. Whereas Volkanovski is a lot more multifaceted when it comes to his stand-up. He'll kick, knee, punch, throw everything out there. One of the best leg kickers in the game, has one of the highest fight IQs, and generally speaking, very difficult to get down exactly what he's doing out there because he has so many different wrinkles to his game. One of the most technical fighters we have ever seen. And anybody who's able to get that down just shows how further their technique is ahead of everybody else. And if Ilia Topuria can be another one who figures out Volkanovski, the future is very, very bright for Topuria. I don't know if anybody will be able to beat him because Volk does a load of things out there, right? He does so many different things. And the more space you give him, the more he's able to work with, which is usually why a lot of his opponents like to back him up, and Volkanovski will allow himself to get backed up at times. He's quite comfortable on the back foot. I don't know if he's going to be as much because he just got knocked out for it, right? He got knocked out by the head kick of Islam Makhachev. Islam was able to pressure him back, and if you don't pressure a kicker, they're able to throw those kicks without any restrictions. And if Volkanovski instead backed up Islam Makhachev, that head kick would not have been as much of an issue for him. But because he was backing up, it led up to him getting knocked out by it. Now, this could be somewhat similar with Ilia Topuria, but not because of the head kick, but because of what Topuria presents with his hands. So I'm very curious to see if Volkanovski's still going to back up in his fights, considering he just got knocked out for doing so. But he's an older guy and habits are very hard to break, especially the older you get. So I do expect him to keep backing up even in this fight, as Topuria also puts the pressure on everybody he fights. Even someone like Josh Emmett, who's the most destructive fighter we've ever seen in the featherweight division, has the most power in his hands. Topuria's even able to back him up while relieving some of his usual pressure. He didn't pressure Emmett like he does to some of his other opponents. He was baiting a lot of Emmett's attacks because he understood the power that Emmett possesses and he doesn't want to stand right in front of it. But he will stand in front of most of his other opponents. And I think he will do the same thing against Volkanovski because Volk, even though he does hit quite hard, he's not as dangerous with his hands like Josh Emmett is. So I do expect Topuria to put more pressure on Volkanovski than he did against Josh Emmett. And honestly speaking, aggression is a big key weapon for Ilia Topuria in this fight. He wants to be aggressive against Volk. Not only to test that chin, but put Volk on the back foot and try to get on the inside. Pocket boxing is the best thing Topuria has on the stand-up, and it is one of the worst things that Volkanovski has. If Ilia Topuria can get right in front of Volkanovski's face and use his close-range boxing skills, that's the way he wins this fight in the stand-up. Anywhere else is going to be far more difficult because Volkanovski has a major reach advantage. He has about a 72-inch reach. Some of his best weapons are his jab and low kicks. Both of those are going to be a lot harder to deal with from range. So if Topuria can get in close and start ripping up left hooks to the body, right overhands to the head, left hooks, and even exchange with Volk, maybe taking a couple, I think he will win these trades. Volkanovski most likely does not have the chin that Topuria has. He doesn't hit as hard as Topuria does. And they both look like they operate on a very similar kind of speed as well. Topuria has a heaviness to his punches that a lot of these other guys don't have. So I think the pocket boxing trades is going to favor Ilia Topuria. But the thing is, how does he get in there? This is the most difficult thing for Ilia Topuria. We know that when he gets in close, he cuts off the cage pretty well. We saw that against Bryce Mitchell. And Bryce Mitchell, just like Volkanovski, likes to move out to their left. Even though they're both in the opposite stances, Bryce Mitchell is a southpaw, Volk is an orthodox, they both move out to their left. And it's going to be much better for Volk because he's able to hide behind his shoulder, right? That left shoulder is going to be in front and higher up, especially when he's throwing jabs. But what we saw in the Topuria and Bryce Mitchell fight was his ability to cut him off with the right hand and step laterally behind that right, constantly cutting off the opponent and staying in front of them. But to get in close range is the biggest battle for Topuria in this fight. He has the shorter reach. He generally doesn't get on the inside of opponents with like meaningful attacks as like Volkanovski will, right? Volkanovski has a much better entry than Topuria does. Topuria does have a jab he can get in there with. He can sway his head on the inside, like head movements to dodge the opponent's punches and get on the inside. Or he can drop feint, or like dropping his weight and feinting like he's going to explode from distance. It gets the opponent to back up, But if they're close to the cage, they can't back up anywhere, so they start moving laterally. They start moving to their left or they move to the right. In Volkanovski's case, he's probably going to move more so to his left and keep up that left guard high in case Topuria fires out the right overhand or hook. But this is a way that Topuria can get on the inside of Volkanovski as well. He just has to watch out for uppercuts. Volk will try to intercept you with uppercuts at times if you're dropping your weight like that. But this is a way for Topuria to bait out that uppercut from Volkanovski or even trade with him with the overhand. We do see historically that when an overhand and an uppercut meet, the guy moving forward with the overhand usually wins the trade most of the time. And the reason for that is the guy moving forward for the overhand, he's getting his head off of the center line, whereas the guy throwing the uppercut is keeping his head on the same place, causing the uppercut to miss and the overhand to just keep going on the same track and hit the opponent. One trade like that, if that punch lands for Ilia Topuria, he probably wins the fight from there. Because I just don't think Volk has the chin to take a big shot like that from Topuria. Not to say that Volk's chin is weak, I wouldn't say it's strong either, but we do know the power that Topuria has, and he's folded so many of his opponents with that punch. Especially if you're throwing an uppercut and not defending yourself, I don't see Volk taking that shot. So that's a way that Topuria can get on the inside and land that big overhand, and even if that doesn't knock out Volk, he's right in front of him now. He's exactly where he wants to be. Now you can throw more combinations. After the overhand, you can throw a left hook to the body, you can throw a left hook to the head, and start just wailing on him until he falls. And if that doesn't work when he's dropping his weight, he can also use that to take down his opponent. This is another path for Ilia Topuria in this fight. If he can't find a way to use his punches to get in close on Volkanovski, because Volk is constantly just jabbing, leg kicking, and moving, he could try to find an opening on Volkanovski for the double leg. And we know Volk does give up his hips many times, especially when you're throwing a feint up high. Specifically, if Topuria fakes like he's going to throw his right hand because of how dangerous it is, Volk will move his head back and expose his hips, and he'll bring his hands up to his head as well. We've seen him do this many times. And from there, Topuria could just shoot the blast double. He could try to get him to the ground and grapple with him, but even if the takedown does not work, it's still fine for Topuria because he got in close. He found his path on where he wants to be, right in front of Volkanovski. As long as he could just push up Volk to the cage, because Volk will try to reverse you. He's done it against Islam Makhachev. So Topuria has to make sure he gets those underhooks on him. It's easier for a shorter guy to get underhooks on a taller opponent, which is another reason why Volk was able to reverse even Islam Makhachev to the cage, because he's just so much shorter, and he's a strong guy as well, of course. But if Topuria can get those underhooks faster than Volkanovski can, or even a body lock or something, and push Volk up against the fence, disengage with one big shot, maybe an elbow. Now he's exited the clinch exactly where he wants to be, right in front of Volkanovski, and he can start trading from there. He can start using what he does best from there. And it's interesting because a lot of fighters don't shoot blast doubles on Volk, even though he gives them a lot of opportunities to do so. Maybe because of his short stature, but now Ilia Topuria, who's about the same height, his double legs are going to be a lot more difficult for Volk to defend against than some of the other fighters he's come across. And most of the featherweights he's fought don't really have a wrestling game to them. Ilia does. So I'm curious to see how effective Ilia's wrestling will be against Volk. So the drop feint can get him on the inside. Shooting a takedown and exiting off can get him on the inside as well. Another way this can work for Topuria is to time the leg kick on Volk. He can either catch onto it and turn that into a takedown and repeat the same steps as before. Or if Volk is throwing an inside leg kick, which is the usual leg kick he will throw, if he throws the inside leg kick, Topuria can step his left foot with it, plant, and fire out the right overhand or right hook from there. This is something that happened between Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier in their first fight. Justin was throwing the inside leg kick, but they were opposite stances. The properties still worked the same way. Dustin was getting hit hard by those leg kicks, but he was stepping with it and firing out his straight, because the kick is putting his foot in the necessary place for him to fire out that power hand. This could be the same exact thing for Topuria, but just without as much damage, right? Justin was causing a lot of damage on Dustin's legs doing so. I don't think Volk with the inside leg kick is going to cause the same kind of damage, and it's going to be much more dangerous if Topuria is able to do the same thing as Dustin did. The only thing is he has to catch Volk as he's exiting out to his own left, right? He'll pull back and exit out left after throwing the leg kick, right? If he can get close enough and angle himself at the perfect place, he could intercept Volk on the chin with that right hook from there. The other ways to get Volk into the close range is to bait him into it, right? If he can't do it forcefully and aggressively, he can bait Volk out to counter and blitz his way into the pocket with Ilia. This is something he did to Josh Emmett. He would constantly feint forward, pretend he's going to throw some punch or something like that, or even reach out with the jab or right straight, pull back afterwards, so when he throws a jab or right straight, he's stepping back away so his opponent engages for a counter and blitzes in on him causing their punch to miss. And then he counters them with his combination. He did this many times against Josh Emmett, and Volkanovski has the same tendency as Josh Emmett does, where opponents sometimes will step in with the jab like Max Holloway did, where he'll step in with the jab, or some guys will even throw a right straight. They'll step back away, and Volkanovski would try to blitz in on them with the overhand, follow up by the left hand, and then sometimes end it with another right. If Topuria can pull back away, he could counter that blitz with his own counter punches, right? He just has to bait those out and cause Volk to fall into that trap. It's a very strategic way to get Volk out of his defense. And we do know Volk is very trigger happy with the right hand when the opponent is engaging him, right? Oftentimes, he will throw that right overhand at them. But the curious thing about this is, does Volk more so do that against tall opponents, or does he do it against everybody? Because he doesn't really fight guys his height. Most of the guys he fights are way taller than he is. So we haven't really seen him do this against shorter opponents since he fought Jose Aldo way back in the day. That was a long time ago. And we can't analyze Volkanovski's skills from back then. He's a completely different fighter now. So I wonder if he still does the same thing, even if it is a similar height opponent like Ilia Topuria in front of him, stepping in with the jab, exiting out on an angle to get on the outside of Volkanovski's right straight or overhand, and countering him for that. And we do know that Ilia Topuria is very good at evading the opponent's right hand. His ability to step away, shoulder roll, and even get on a slight enough of an angle to avoid the right overhand and right straight of his opponent, specifically when he fought Josh Emmett, who's very fast and explosive, was quite impressive, how consistent he was with that defense. And he could do something similar to Volkanovski, except that Volk has a little bit more of an intricate and sneakier way to explode on you than Josh Emmett does. Josh Emmett is a lot more obvious when he explodes than Volkanovski is, but Volk even still will hop in at you, like blitz in, bounce back at you with these combinations, and it could still be somewhat obvious. And I think Topuria would be ready for something like that, because not only does Volk throw overhands, but he will throw right straights in these kind of exchanges as well. And we've seen time and time again that Ilia is very good at avoiding those. And when Volkanovski is exchanging with his combinations, he likes to duck his head a lot for the overhands. In these kind of trades, his head movement is not necessarily too tricky. Left shovel hooks after he throws the left hand, because we know he's gonna dip his head to the right side and low so he can start cocking back for the right overhand. A left shovel hook from Topuria in those moments can catch Volkanovski very flush and then exchanging with his own right. So it's kind of like, after Volk throws his left hand, Topuria has to fire his own left shovel hook, right? Shovel hooks and overhand follow-ups are a great weapon for Topuria in the pocket like this. Now, what Topuria needs to avoid. Now, avoiding a left hook is tough for Ilia, because he constantly exposes his right guard when he's throwing punches, as I've mentioned many times before. Volk's left hook will be a problem, but if Ilia can block or bob and weave it, he could throw that left shovel hook and catch Volk. Head kicks might also be an issue for Ilia. It's an issue for both fighters, but Ilia barely throws kicks at all, so I'm willing to believe that if there is a head kick being thrown in this fight, it is going to be from Volk. Even Josh Emmett almost caught Ilia with a left flush head kick, and specifically the left kicks that get to Ilia easier. Volk doesn't throw head kicks too often, but in a fight where both guys don't have great head kicking defense, someone is bound to throw them, and I think Volkanovski is more likely to throw one. So it could be also interesting for Topuria to try to bait those out just to see if Volk will throw them out there, right? If he gets into the range and dips his head a little bit, purposely creating an opening that Volk thinks he can fire through, and then blocking or moving away from the head kick, it will reveal the hand of Volkanovski to Ilia Topuria. That's another tactic here that Topuria can start using just to see the cards that Volkanovski's playing with in this fight. So there are quite a few things that Ilia Topuria can work with here to defeat Alexander Volkanovski. So I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown, and if you did, make sure to give this a like, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video.